You're listening to the podcast for all of the news, notes, and breakdowns for your Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Sons of the Shoe with Nick Wilson and Spencer German.
It is not Nick Wilson and Spencer German. It is Spencer German, Jake Vulinec. We're still working on getting the intro changed. It'll happen at some point. Maybe in the off season when we actually have a chance to breathe and not have college football news to talk about. But it is Sons of the Shoe. We implore you, as always, to like, follow, subscribe, review the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, the Odyssey app, 92 Through the Fans YouTube channel, where many of you showed up to watch our post-game reaction to Michigan. We'll talk about that here coming up. But however you get your podcasts, we appreciate you guys jumping on in and following along. And we are still sort of reeling, still emotional, still reacting and feeling the effects of the devastating loss over the weekend to Michigan, inexcusable loss to Michigan, whatever you want to call it. And I do have to say, Jake, I think I need to open the show with a bit of an apology here. You know, there's a lot of people in this world who, when they do something wrong, they don't own up to it. And they don't know how to do apologies. They don't know how to actually be sincerely sorry for something. So I read the comments. I saw what people were saying in the comments section on the 92 Through the Fan YouTube channel, and I would just like to issue a heartfelt apology. I wrote this out so that you guys know it's legit. To my co-host Jake for steamrolling him in our last episode. I saw the comments, the criticisms. I was called rude. I was called disrespectful. I was told that I talk too much, and I'm willing to look in the mirror and do some self-reflection. Like Ryan Day, I became too emotional about the Michigan game, and I let our team here at the Sons of the Shoe down. I was frustrated. I was mad. I was emotional. But Jake has a voice and should be heard on our show, and I was wrong to step on his toes so much. And I vowed to get better as a co-host and a podcast partner to Jake. I apologize again to Jake for my rudeness, but if you want to know if I regret any part of my real-time response, the answer is no, because whether you're an Ohio State fan who was as angry as I was or a Michigan fan just looking to troll us, you tuned in to what is now the most watched video on the 92 Through the Fan YouTube channel. So I guess we're doing something right. Jake, if any of my reactions that you didn't, if any of the reactions that you didn't get a chance to give on the show on Saturday are still on the tip of your tongue and you want to get them off your chest, I am going to concede the floor to you. Even if you want to just use the time to just rip me a new one because I stepped on your toes, that's totally fine too. But this is me turning over a new leaf, Jake, because I was very emotional on Saturday.
I just think everybody in the comments was more upset than I was. I was just sitting back, sort of enjoyed it. I knew you were upset. I was sort of chiming in with my pieces. Listen, you had a lot to say. You said a lot. I'll get it in a different episode. It's not that big of a deal. All right, we'll make it up. We're going to be doing this thing for a long time, right? It's not going to be like the only episode I'm on. And
that's the goal. Yeah. It's
not like I was Aaron McMahon this week, who you brought in, and I was the our Michigan beat reporter, and I just didn't get to talk, right?
Well, that's funny.
That would be a problem.
It's funny you say that because like somebody in the comments actually said that they're like, "What's the point of having a guest on if you're not going to let the guest talk?" And I was like, "It's not a guest; it's my co-host." Yeah. But then that kind of hit me. I was like, well, yeah, because it's my co-host, that's also kind of bad because he should be able to talk too." But I also think like, I mean, you know how it goes, Jake. Like, there's certain instances where like I'm going to be more emotional about certain things, and then there'll be certain instances where you're more emotional about things, and sometimes like getting out of the way is okay. At some point, I hope to give you the same grace that you gave me. But I did feel bad about that after I sort of went back and saw the comments because I didn't want it to seem like it was just me running the show. But obviously, I was in the moment, in real time. I was emotional. And I think that sort of shined through because, like I said, Jake, we are now the proud owners of the most watched video on the 92 Through the Fan YouTube channel. I haven't checked today. I'll pull this up. But we were at like over 15,000 views, and now we're actually at over 16,000 views now, 16,309. So, I mean, I think I speak for both of us, and I'll let you sort of say something here too. But I think I speak for both of us when I say like, just thank you because, this is what we do it for. And I know a show like that is going to generate a lot of buzz on, and traffic because it was such an emotional game for Ohio State and Michigan and those two fan bases. And I think we kind of saw the results of that because you had Michigan fans who just wanted to come in to see somebody like me melting down on a podcast. And you had Ohio State fans who wanted to see like what we had to say about it. So it was kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think we're very happy with the results. I think we're a little bit humbled by the results, honestly. I don't know that either of us saw that coming. So, like, yeah, it was going to bring the traction, but for it to bring that much traction, I think was it was a cool experience. So, looking to build off it and hopefully deliver you guys some more good content going forward. So,
yeah, and we're hoping to build off of it with this new episode because there are still a lot of different in real time and just with the game only being a few days ago and the loss only being a few days ago, the people are still talking about Ryan Day. It's still a hot topic, and I think there's a lot of tentacles that now kind of branch off of this, including what it means for the college football playoff rankings, which did come out on Tuesday night. We will talk about that here coming up in a little bit, and just what it means for Ohio State if the committee got it right, what not, and some other things. We'll have 4 down territory for you as well. But I actually want to start because, Jake, when it comes to Ryan Day, and we were both pretty adamant after the game, like this might be it for him, and maybe it should be, aside from maybe making a run to the national championship. Like the way he gets about that game, it infects the locker room, infects the roster, and we saw it play out on Saturday where he can't get over that hump, and it's a real problem now. And you can find a coach that can do what he does at this point, which is, go 10-2 and lose to Michigan every year. And the hope is that you'd be able to find somebody who's better. But I think the problem is like people are so quick to just be like, all right, Ryan Day's got to go, let's fire him, without really knowing or like thinking through like what the options are and the solutions are in terms of filling that void if you were to actually go through with it. And I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to deter people from feeling that way. I'm not trying to deter people from saying that Ryan Day should be the head coach for this team, because I think at this point he has dug himself enough of a hole that it's legitimate. Like there's reasons to move on from him if they want to. But I think without like a real solution, it sort of seems like a silly practice to just like throw out there, like fire him and think that you can just get any coach and it's going to be like, instantly everything's fixed. I know the Mike Vrabel name is the most popular. If you could get Mike Vrabel, I'm all for it. I just don't think he's coming to Ohio State or coming to college because he has flat out said before that he doesn't like the recruiting stuff. So Jake, maybe your answer is Mike Vrabel. I have an answer that I want to talk about and see how people feel about it. But do you have a candidate for you that stands out as like, that's the guy that I would want to replace Ryan Day?
Is it bad to say no? Like, and not in the sense of I haven't looked. It's in the sense of I look at the candidates that are sort of out there, and it's like there's no real like slam dunk, like hit it out of the park hire. It feels like.
So
to me, it's just sort of like it's a lot of middle of the line. Like you're either pulling a guy from another school who's had very limited success, or you're sort of reaching deep in the bag. Like Mike Vrabel would be great. I think if you're looking to sort of right the wrongs of Ryan Day, people calling this a finesse team, that would probably be the guy to do it, right?
Yeah.
You're probably going to recruit in the trenches. I struggle to see a Mike Vrabel team that would be soft, but like you said, he doesn't like the whole recruiting style, and I'm sure he's not very thrilled with NIL at this point. Like, that's just, it's going to be hard to convince a guy to come coach college, especially when I think Mike Vrabel's going to be up for an NFL job next year once again. Like, he'll probably be slotted in as a head coach somewhere, or at least considered for the job for one. So I just don't know that I see it.
Yeah. And listen, money can always change somebody's mind, of course. Like if they threw all the money in the world at him, maybe he would consider it. But like, that's been the pie in the sky name for several years now. When it's come to Ryan Day, like, oh, go get Mike Vrabel. But you want to talk about like easy transitions. I don't know that it's that flawless. Like everyone makes it seem so easy. Like, oh, you just fire Ryan Day and get Mike Vrabel, he'll come back. And it's like, no, to your point, he's going to be the top candidate probably for a lot of these NFL jobs this year. And if he really hates the recruiting thing, I think like he's going to stay in the NFL and he's going to take one of those jobs. So I've already kind of ruled out in my mind Mike Vrabel, which is why that's not where my head is at for the candidate that I have in mind. But to go back to you real quick, because you say you don't know if there's like a slam dunk hire. So does that change how you feel about firing Ryan Day then, knowing that there's maybe not a slam dunk hire? Or for you, is it about like, You just got to get somebody else in there for sort of a fresh perspective, and you're willing to take that risk.
Yeah, you got to be willing to take the risk.
Okay.
Like, what's the difference right now between anybody else that you could bring in? Even if you're not a slam dunk, like keeping Ryan Day is not a slam dunk, right?
Yeah.
He's what, 2-4 in bowl games and 1-3 in the college football playoffs, and 0-4 in his last 4 appearances against Michigan. Like, anybody else could walk in and do that exact same thing with the roster that Ohio State can build. I just don't think that anybody that you put in there pretty much is going to be at least on par with Ryan Day. And if you're going to be on par with him, what's the point in not making the change? Because there clearly needs to be something different that happens.
Yeah, and I people make a big deal out of like the recruiting thing, and I understand why. Like your team is built through recruiting, and that extends to now the transfer portal as well. Yep. And from all we've ever heard, Ryan Day is great on the with the recruiting side. Like recruits love Ryan Day. He goes to bat for his guys, and that's part of the biggest reason why he's probably kept that job to this point. But the idea that like you lose your coach and everything just like goes up in flames, I think is over exaggerated. I mean, think about Bama last year. They lost the greatest coach in the history of college football into retirement in Nick Saban. And really only like 2 or 3 guys transferred. Like I know it was Julian Sain, who obviously ended up at Ohio State. It was Caleb Downs. It was Caden Proctor, who transferred to Iowa and then ended up back at Alabama by the time spring ball was done. So it's like they didn't. It's not like it was like mass exodus like everybody thought it was going to be. And then you look at like the rankings this year for recruiting, and I know it is National Signing Day the day we're recording this. So, chance for Ohio State to bolster their talent pool coming in and all these other teams. And we'll certainly have reactions to that coming up in probably next week. But like they're still in the top 3. Bama is still a top 3 team in terms of recruiting. So it's like these brands, these teams, like they don't miss a beat when it comes to that stuff. I understand what people are saying when it's like, well, Ryan Day's got these really great recruiting classes. And it's like, okay, maybe you lose a couple recruits, but you can quickly rebuild because you're Ohio State. You're a brand that everybody knows, and you're going to generate the revenue and the NIL money you need to still stay atop college football in that realm. So I'm not tied to that because I have seen as the reaction and the calamity from Saturdays kind of dissipated, I have seen some people kind of get reserved back to, well, they're probably not going to fire him. And, his recruiting classes are really good. So maybe we just kind of stay the course here. It took Jim Harbaugh a long time to get over the hump against Ohio State. Maybe it's just the same thing with Ryan Day. And I get where people sort of have backed off their initial emotional reactions to things. But I think that the evidence shows you it's not as bad as you think. I get there's risk. But I don't think it's as bad as you think in terms of like losing a step in the world of college football just because you fire your coach.
Yeah, no, Ohio State's always going to be able to recruit. That's never going to be like, look back in history, guys. Like Ohio State's always been a team who has brought in top recruits. They're a national brand. People know them. They're never going to be a bad college football team. It'd be stunning if they walked off and were a bad college football team. They survived it, coach after coach, regime after regime. It has not mattered. I think they're going to be just fine. It's just, I don't know. You should probably be backing off the Ryan Day thing, guys. You should probably stay pretty firm on that. I think they're going to fire him. I don't think you get to lose 4 times to Michigan. In the Jim Harbaugh argument, by the way, I brought this up on the air on Sunday. Like, it is sort of like a reflection of, yes, Jim Harbaugh lost, 5 times in a row to Ohio State before getting a win?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
And Michigan fans wanted him out, but also think about the team that Jim Harbaugh took over. It was not like team seeded to be in the college football playoffs.
It took time for him to build his program up. You're right about that.
Right. Ryan Day, as everyone loves to say, sort of born on third base, right? He took over a team that was, already ready to compete for a national championship. That's what you walked into. You don't get the same grace that Jim Harbaugh got having to, not rebuild a program from scratch, but rebuild a program that was sort of in a slump. That's why Jim Harbaugh got a little bit of a rope.
That's maybe that's maybe the best point, honestly, on the Ryan Day front, and because people bring up that Jim Harbaugh argument all the time, and I think you're spot on. Like you don't get that same grace just because because of the situation that you had wasn't the situation that Jim Harbaugh had. So that's really well said by you. I think like again, if he wins the national championship, I think his job is safe. I mean, you can't. Nobody's going to fire somebody after winning a national championship. But I also will say this, like. the Ross Bjork comments that came out on like Sunday or Monday or whatever it was through the Columbus Dispatch. What the fuck did you think he was going to say? Like, yeah, emotions are running high, but like his team's about to go to the college football playoff. Do you really think the week that the transfer portal is going to open up and like all these recruits are going to start signing, that your AD is going to come out and be like, yeah, we're going to have some real tough discussions once this playoff run is done about the future of Ryan Day? Like that just that throws your whole program into like flux for the next several weeks, and that just puts added pressure on the team going into the playoff after a game that they just played with like the most intense pressures that you could ever play with, because Ryan Day does that to them. Like, why the hell would he admit if they was going to fire him now? Like, it doesn't make any damn sense.
Yeah. If I'm a recruit, I'm going, wow, look at Ohio State. I just got recruited and now they want to change everything. Put me in Columbus. Let's go.
Yeah. Like what? Like
no, it's probably like Alabama, Ohio State. Well, one's going to keep their coach.
Right.
Probably.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like anybody who was making a big deal out of that, and I saw it was getting like aggregated over and over again. Like, well, Ross Bjork says he has his support. It's like, yeah, of course he has his support on December 2nd and 3rd. But like, what's going to happen after December 21st in the first round of the playoff? Then we'll see if things are different. So, hold the phone on that. But I've put it off long enough. I've talked about, people not necessarily having like a follow-up to Ryan Day and a successor to Ryan Day. And they just kind of throw out like it's time to fire him, but they don't have a solution. I have a solution, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, especially, Jake, now that I know from your perspective, you're sort of like, I don't know if I like any of these candidates, but you got to try something. My answer is Marcus Freeman. And, we talked about Mike Vrabel. I think the same sort of thing applies to Marcus Freeman. You don't have questions about his team's toughness. You never hear them talk about like Notre Dame's not tough, and you don't have an identity crisis there. He is, and I heard Riley Leonard say this after the game on last Saturday. I was listening to his press conference, and he said Marcus Freeman is a culture builder. And one of our biggest things right now with Ryan Day is like, yeah, we know he can recruit, but what type of culture is he building if he puts so much pressure on this Michigan game that the players then feel it and they go out and they lose? And the culture right now he's created is like, yeah, we have all this talent, but we fall short every single year. I don't think that's going to happen with Marcus Freeman. I really don't. And I also saw a team that like you lost to NIU, which was one of the worst, maybe the loss on the season for any of these teams in the top 10, maybe just in general. NIU's a MAC school and Notre Dame's a top 6 team in the country. Like, how do you lose to that team? But the way they responded, like they proceeded, and I know their schedule was soft this year. And I talked about that ad nauseum a bunch of times, but like they steamrolled pretty much everybody they played after that, other than I think Louisville was the closest game they played. And Louisville is a pretty good team this year. And they won that game by 7, but they steamrolled everybody else on their schedule like they were supposed to do. They took care of business. It was like that game lit a spark under them. Like they responded in an emphatic way and went out and dominated. What happened when Ryan Day was faced with some adversity this year? They lost to Oregon on the road. And then the next game they played after a bye week, they almost get upset by Nebraska, who was like a middle of the road team this year. So like, I just the way that he responded, like, and I understand it's only year 3 of Marcus Freeman. He probably still has a lot. I mean, that's the biggest thing people have thrown back in my face when I put his name out there is like, what has he proven in 3 years at Notre Dame and blah, 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 blah. But like, I see a guy who clearly the players want to play for him. And that also was true even the day he started on the job, because if you remember, Brian Kelly left high and dry, and he was the guy that like everybody embraced and said like, man, I hope they give Marcus the job. And then they gave him the job because players kind of vouched for him, and it's worked out. Like, have they won a lot of things that to this point in terms of trophies and, playoff games and all this? No, but they're going to get a chance to this year. I just think Marcus Freeman fits that same mold. He comes from the Tressel era, so he knows about the rivalry. He knows what it takes. He's an Ohio guy as well. He's an Ohio State alum. I think all those things add up to a guy that I think would be masterful in that role. And if he's not, and he's giving you the same results as Ryan Day, then you just do the same thing you're doing with Ryan Day right now.
I guess my main pushback, like aside from the fact of like, yeah, he hasn't shown it for very long. But again, we talked about that. That's sort of all the coaches that are going to be up for the job at this point is you're going to be taking a bit of a risk. Is Ohio State really that much more of a coveted job than Notre Dame is?
Yes, I think it is. I think Ohio State is one of the top probably 3 jobs in the country. And I think, and not that Notre Dame isn't like a premier program.
Yeah,
And this,
like, isn't Notre Dame like a top 10 job in the
probably
country?
10, but let's face it, man, like Brian Kelly left several years ago. And I'm not saying that Marcus Freeman seems like he's a good person where he's not going to do the Brian Kelly skeezy thing of just like, yeah, I'm here, and then just like leave on a whim. Like, I don't think he would spurn the program the way that Brian Kelly did. But like, we know why Brian Kelly left. It was resources. Like, Notre Dame has great resources, but they're not Ohio State's resources. You know what I'm saying? And I'll give Marcus Freeman some credit. Like, even though maybe Notre Dame has some limitations there, he has tried to swing big. He hasn't necessarily nailed or brought in a ton of like the 5-star recruits to this point, and he still misses out on some of those guys to the Bamas and the Ohio States of the world. But he's trying, and that kind of goes back to the cultures that he's building. And part of the reason why I think like he'd be a flawless transition on the recruiting trail if you were to bring him in, because he has a good reputation right now, and now you're just throwing him into the mix with like all these kids that are I call them kids, but like all these men that are coming in. Like, I think he would make for an easy transition in that regard if he came to Ohio State. But I think Ohio State is kind of a step up from Notre Dame, even though Notre Dame is still a premier job.
So it might be a step up, I guess, and this is probably a consider for anybody who's coming in. You're not stepping into the best situation. Like, Ohio State's a great job to have. You're going to be put with some of the
How
best
is it not
players
the
in the
best
country.
situation when you have like the talent that you're bringing in every year and like the recruiting classes?
Right, like that is a great situation. Your bad situation is the fact of the pressure that's put on you immediately to not only like, just be successful in the job that you step into in your first year, but when the Michigan game comes up, 1000% you have to win that game. Like,
yeah,
if you lose that game, people are going to be calling for your job year one. And then even the games beyond that, Ryan Day can't win the big game. You know what Ohio State fans are going to want to see? A coach that wins the big game. So if you walk into a college football playoff and then get first rounded, or God forbid you miss a college football playoff, like, you're going to have your head on a stick. I think the only thing for Marcus Freeman is at Notre Dame, he's got job security. Like, that's the only thing that sticks out to me of why am I going to go put my neck on the line? Sure, I can make more money. I might be able to take a job that's slightly higher up. Like, again, I think Notre Dame's probably a top 10 job in the country, and I get Ohio State's probably a top like 2 or 3 job in the country. You're taking a step up, but also putting your neck completely on the line to where you might, I don't know, say fall flat on your face, but you might fall lower than Notre Dame if it doesn't go your way.
2 things. Being an alum, like that sometimes has a pull that helps, right? Like, he's played there. He understands the pressures of that game and understands the pressures that come there. So I think somebody who gets it, I think that's less daunting to them. But you're right. Like, the job security thing's a real thing. But what I will say though about coaches, and I can't speak to Marcus Freeman's psyche. Like, I don't know what goes through his head or if he's even thought about it or whatever, but we always throw that out there with like the job security thing. And we're like, well, why would you leave this situation? Why would you leave that situation? But like, then like Brian, you could have said the same thing about Brian Kelly. They were talking about like him being there for years and years. Like, he had no reason to leave, but he left because he was like, I can't win a championship here. I can win a championship, I think, at LSU with the resources that they have. And so he left. And yeah, like, he's a skeezy guy anyway, it seems. So I'm not like trying to defend Brian Kelly.
Well, I mean, clearly a guy from the South, you've heard the accent. He just
Boston guy who clearly is now just a carpetbagger and changed his entire, voice and everything just to kind of fit the mold. He's fake. He's fake as hell. But like, along those lines, like, I don't know that these coaches think that way. I don't think that these coaches sit there and they're like, well, my job security here is a lot better than it's going to be at Ohio State if I lose to Michigan year one. I think I think it's just the competitive nature of these guys. Like, I think their thought process always is, like, I can be the guy at that program to like get them on track. I can be the guy to win a national title here. I can be the guy to take down Michigan. I can take, like, I don't think that they sit there and they worry about like job security. I think they look at that as like they see it as a challenge maybe, but I think these guys embrace that stuff. And that's why I think like it's I see what you're saying. Like, yeah, Notre Dame, you feel safe. And maybe Marcus Freeman feels that Notre Dame's on par with Ohio State, so he's not going to leave and he's just going to stay there. Fine. But I do wonder, like, I do feel that if the opportunity presents itself, I don't think he's going to turn it down because of the pressures. I think he would just turn it down because he likes his situation in Notre Dame.
Yeah. So I guess I would toss this to you because another name that I've seen floated around a lot is another guy who could be in the college football playoffs playing for his conference title this weekend, Matt Campbell, head coach over at Iowa State.
Yeah.
What makes you like Marcus Freeman more than Matt Campbell?
So Matt Campbell with resources does intrigue me. Like the idea of that intrigues me. We know he's an Ohio guy, coached at Mount Union, which kind of gross, but we would accept him if he actually got the job. And then obviously was at Toledo. I think there's been reasons to be excited about Matt Campbell. That's a similar situation where like his job security at Iowa State's like off the charts because he's winning, 9-10 games a year. And people are like, oh, this is not something Iowa State's really used to. So
right,
great.
But that's the thing. Like Iowa State's not Notre Dame, right?
Yeah.
That's where it's the difference maker for me in that psyche. But
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I think that's maybe the big difference with Marcus Freeman is like he's at least done it on a bigger scale. He's proven he can still recruit with some of the best programs in the country. At a program that has some pressures on it, even if it's not quite the level of Ohio State. And again, he's directly an Ohio State guy. I think like those are the things that kind of play into it for me. So I don't know. Like, and again, maybe he says no. Maybe he's not interested. Maybe he feels because people throw out Dan Lanning. I don't understand why anybody believes Dan Lanning would ever leave Oregon. Like he beat Ohio State this year. To me, I'm assuming Dan Lanning just views his program is right there on par with Ohio State. So why leave? And maybe Marcus Freeman feels the same. But like, again, Ohio State guy, resources off the charts, NIL money off the charts. He could do what he's doing at Notre Dame and build the same sort of thing at Ohio State. And I think it would have success. And maybe it wouldn't work out. I get people are like, he hasn't proven a lot. Okay, fine. But again, in the vein of like, there's a lot of guys out there who can do what Ryan Day's doing right now. You might as well try with somebody like Marcus Freeman, who's kind of like on the rise in terms of being a head coach. Here's the other thing too. His buyout right now in his contract is only $4 million. That's like chump change for a team like Ohio State if they're trying to pluck him before he signs like a mega contract extension where it's like, 60, 70 million. And it's going to be difficult to like get him out from underneath it. This is the window if you want to try to get him.
Yeah. Dan Lanning has unlimited resources when we talk about that because he quite literally has unlimited resources. Yeah. So I don't see why you would ever leave that job once you have it. Because listen, if you want to recruit,
hey, Mario Cristobal did, but yeah. Well, he also, but actually, that's a good example for the Marcus Freeman thing, though. He left to go back to his alma mater. He left Oregon, which is a great program, like you said, with unlimited resources, to go to his alma mater. Maybe there's something there for Marcus Freeman too, where it's that pull. I don't know again for sure if that's how he feels. The Notre Dame fans I talked to are like, I don't think he'd leave, but like. I warn people all the time about that. I have seen numerous coaches. We've seen numerous coaches. Lincoln Riley literally did like a post-game press conference at Oklahoma and said, yeah, all that nonsense about USC, it ain't happening. Like, or maybe it was LSU. That I think he was linked to the LSU job at the time. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to LSU. Like, what are you talking about? And then the next day, he was flying out to USC and taking that job. Like, these coaches lie to your face all the time. Again, Marcus Freeman seems like a good guy. I'm not saying he's being disingenuous about his love for Notre Dame, but at a moment's notice, if Ohio State comes calling, it might be too good for him to pass up if the money's there and if he has an opportunity to coach his alma mater. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't rule him out. I think he's probably one of the top like 3 candidates. I think the 3 guys who laid out are probably going to be people's top 3 picks, which is Matt Campbell, Mike Vrabel, and Marcus Freeman. I don't know. To me, again, it's just nobody's like this mailbox hit it out of the park hire.
What about Urban Meyer? Because there are reports out there that Urban Meyer apparently would be interested in taking the job back. And we know what he did at Ohio State, but he's now 60 years old. He's like, 2018 was the last time he coached. So he's like 6 years removed from being the head coach of this program. NIL is really ramped up. Recruiting's different now. Like, would you pivot back to Urban Meyer to sort of save your program at this point?
No. I've been tainted by Jacksonville Jaguars version of Urban Meyer, okay? The guy that was sitting in the bar, getting a little frisky, if you would. That guy, the guy who's pulling a little bit of antics with his team. No. Just keep that away from the program at this point. You're 6 years removed. Who knows what he can do with NIL, let alone trying to coach like Gen Z as they're coming up.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, some of the antics that I heard he was pulling in Jacksonville, like kicking your kicker, just don't seem like they would go over very well with me with the new generation. Like, that's probably not how you handle and coach that like group. It's just not how it's going to work. Like, the group before them or maybe before them, you get away with that stuff. And like, that's sort of the build it tough and guys are like built and sort of see that aspect of it. I don't think that's currently the way that you handle coaching this generation.
It's funny you bring that up because I've always heard stories about Urban, the way that he coaches, and I wonder why it worked with kids. For some reason, and again, I say kids, but with these teenagers who are becoming men going to college, for some reason it worked, right? Like he somehow got through to guys. And that is my biggest fear with Urban is is it too far gone now? Are his antics, is there enough out there now about his antics and sort of the way he treats his players at times that people aren't going to respect him, or is the lure of his national championship rings enough that they kind of just listen to him and do what they're told? I don't know. But I do think it's changed in a way where I can't necessarily trust him. Also, can I throw this out there too? Urban basically picked Ryan Day as his successor. Does he not get some sort of criticism for that? He just kind of blindly told Gene Smith and the program hey, give the job to this guy. He's great. He'll keep the track record going. And he had that cute little video where he passed in the remote controller that I saw everybody making fun of this week, where it was they cut to Grand Theft Auto and Ryan Day's just driving the bus off a cliff. So on some level, yeah, I get that you trust Urban Meyer because he won you a title, but he also picked the guy that we're now talking about firing. So is it just an easy thing to go back to him and then have him do this again and tell you who the next coach should be, and then he gets it wrong again? I don't know. All right, guys, we appreciate you stopping on by. We are going to take a quick break to get a word from our sponsors. When we get back, though, we do have to talk about the latest iteration of the college football playoff. How far did the Buckeyes fall? Did they get it right? And a silver lining that I sort of pointed out about not playing in the Big Ten championship game this weekend. Jake and I will talk about it next on Sons of the Shoe. Welcome back in the aftermath of Ohio State's loss to Michigan, an inexcusable loss, as we know. They dropped in the rankings as expected to number 6 overall in the college football playoff rankings. So your top 10, I'll just rattle off here for you: Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, SMU, Indiana, and Boise State. And the ranking obviously being different, the what you are in the rankings is different than what your seed is in the tournament, as we know, because conference champions get first round, or the top 4 conference champions get the buys. So the way that it plays out when you do the bracket is Oregon is your 1 seed, Texas 2, Boise State 4, SMU 3. I did that backwards, I know. And those are your teams with the buys. And so that sets the stage for matchups in the first round between Alabama as your 11 seed and Notre Dame as your 6 seed. Penn State is your 5 seed against Arizona State, your 12 seed. Indiana, your 10 seed versus Georgia, your 7 seed. And of course, your Ohio State Buckeyes as the 8 seed against the 9 seed Tennessee Volunteers. Jake, this is, first of all, the setup of the bracket to me is beautiful, because the thing that we wanted, which was each conference playing each other head to head this time of year to sort of prove it on the field, plays out perfectly, where you have Big Ten team or 2 Big Ten teams versus 2 SEC teams, an SEC team versus independent Notre Dame, and then a Big Ten team against a Big 12 team in Arizona State. So the setup couldn't be better. But I know there's some controversy about how far Ohio State fell and whether or not they should be hosting a first round game. Do you think the committee got it right in regards to where they put Ohio State versus Tennessee, which is the team that everyone's really up in arms about, I think, at this point?
Yeah, I think when you look at the actual schedules and sort of how they dropped, Ohio State fell pretty much right where they should be. I think I said, 8 to 10 is where I saw them drop into. They slot in at 8. It makes pretty good sense to me. SMU, I guess, could have had a chance to bump them, but even then, they're currently sitting in a first round bye, so it wouldn't have made a difference. That's the only team I could have seen really jumping them. Tennessee, I think when you compare them schedule by schedule, Ohio State having losses to Oregon and Michigan is not that much different, and I see just slightly better than having losses to Georgia and now their second
Arkansas.
Loss. Yeah, Arkansas. Losing
6
to the
and 6, Arkansas, by the way. So very similar in terms of record. Michigan's 1 game better. But yeah, I think they're probably similar teams, right?
Yeah, like it's a disappointing loss for both Tennessee and Ohio State. Neither team thought they were going to lose that game, and they did. And then both of them sort of lost to okay, this team's just better than us, which I think Oregon, by the way, undefeated and hasn't lost to anybody, and you lost to them by 1 compared to Tennessee losing to Georgia, who's currently your 7th seed and has shown several signs of weakness, maybe that Oregon hasn't. Like, I don't see the argument for going the other way. Not to mention they lost that game by 2 scores.
Well, and also, like, Georgia is your number 5 in the country right now based on the rankings, right? And they beat Tennessee 31-17, and I believe they outscored them. Like, didn't Tennessee like not score in the second half, or they only kicked like a field goal in the second half? I think they actually got outscored like 24 zip in the second half of that game. Like, they beat you pretty handily in the second half and like pulled away. Ohio State's
in all fairness, Ohio State against Michigan didn't score in the second half either.
No, and that's very fair. But like, again, they each have noting that they each have one bad loss.
Yeah,
Ohio State's is Michigan, Tennessee's is Arkansas. That to me, that kind of like they cancel each other out. So you each have a bad loss. But then you're looking at the loss that each team has to a top 5 team in the country. Ohio State's was on the road, which was, I can't remember if was Georgia Tennessee on the road, or was that game? Yeah, it was. It was in Georgia. Yep. So it was on the road, and it was a 1-point loss that came down to like the last couple seconds where Ohio State almost had a chance to get a field goal to win the game, and it was by 1 point in a tough environment to play. Like the law, like that doesn't compute to me the same as Georgia. And the other part of this too that I think Tennessee fans are missing is like, the committee basically told you they valued Ohio State and they valued the Big Ten this season over a team like Tennessee because they had Penn State ranked ahead of them. At one point, they had Indiana with the crap schedule that they played ahead of Tennessee. So Ohio State has a win over Tennessee, or has a win over Penn State. What top 5 team has Tennessee beaten? They haven't. They haven't beaten a top 5 team. Like, their best win is Alabama, which is a fringe playoff team at this point. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it makes sense. I kind of figured this is what it was going to be. I guess the big question now becomes like, how worried are you about a Tennessee team coming north to Columbus to play the Buckeyes? Because that to me looks like it's probably going to end up being the matchup, because we'll talk about it coming up in Fort Down territory. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of changes based on what comes out this weekend specific to that matchup. Like, that feels like one that's going to stay the same just based on what could potentially happen in conference championship weekend.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty close to set in stone. By the way, Tennessee's big loss here was Georgia, and they almost lost to Georgia Tech. They went 8 overtimes to beat Georgia Tech. Like, that could have been even worse.
The bottom line, I guess, is there's no good teams this year.
Yeah, correct.
Which is why Ohio State, I guess, theoretically could win a national championship. But
and Oregon's a good team. They haven't lost a game. Right?
That's true. They're the one. They're the one exception, yes.
Yeah. Everybody else sucks. That's what we come down to. No, I think that one's pretty set in stone. I think you have a couple of things that could flip around here, but mostly I think everything's pretty much set. Like, I think the SEC title game's really interesting with Texas and Georgia, because that's also being played at Mercedes-Benz, so it's basically in Georgia's backyard. So that's always one that gets interesting. And I think Texas is slightly fraudulent. Other than that,
well, they'll get to prove it this weekend. If Georgia beats them again, then we'll know. So
yeah, other than that, the only thing I ever see really changing, though, is the ACC championship could make things a little wonky. Like, could SMU still slip in?
Yeah. Well, let's I want to kind of table some of this, because we're going to talk about it more in Fort Down territory. Yeah. The last thing I'll say, because again, assuming that that's the matchup we're going to get, we'll have time to break it down. I am very, very nervous about a matchup with Tennessee, because they have a very similar style of defense as Michigan, very good defensive line, and they can actually throw the ball. So again, we'll save that for another conversation. The other thing I was going to say, though, since you brought up Oregon too, Jake, maybe I might have found the silver lining in not playing this weekend against Oregon. And that is that, listen, you lost to them the first time. They always say it's tough to beat a team twice, right? Yeah. And so the way the bracket sets up right now, after this matchup with Tennessee, if Ohio State were to advance, they would then face Oregon immediately in the quarterfinal round instead of the semifinal round.
Yeah.
I almost think, like, not showing your hand too much in a second matchup in the Big Ten championship game could serve ultimately to benefit Ohio State when if they get to a point where they face Oregon in the quarterfinal round, because it's like, well, now we only play you twice. We get you out of the way early. And if you beat Oregon in the quarterfinal round, like, that almost clears the path for you, where you feel like you'll feel pretty good I mean, like on that side of the bracket, it's Tennessee, Ohio State, Oregon in the upper part, and then Penn State, Arizona State, and Boise State in the bottom part. Like Penn State, a team you already beat. Boise State, a team that I would imagine Ohio State would be a favorite against them. And Arizona State, same thing. Like if you get past Oregon, you basically set yourself up to be in like perfect position to like advance on to the championship game free and clear. And like I said, I think there's like some gamesmanship here of like not tipping your hand or giving more stuff away to them about how you want to attack them and what you want to do against them. I'm not saying they would win. I'm not even saying they get past Tennessee, but it does maybe give this silver lining where it's like if they had played them a second time and maybe they win, now one of those teams is going to have to win in the third matchup. And I would have felt more nervous about having to play them a third time, especially if you had just beaten them in the Big Ten championship game, than I do now that it's like, well, you only played once and you lost to them the first time.
Yeah, I think I'd feel better about not having to play them 3 times. I think overall you probably just want to avoid Oregon up until the very last second that you can. So I think drawing them second round is probably not great for you. I think you'd rather probably face them at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Whatever they got to go figure out and have as many teams try to rough them up or, get their shot at them before you have to again. I think that's best case scenario, but you're going to need some help from conference championship games to potentially even slot you up. And again, I mean, we'll talk about it. I don't know. That's a possibility.
Yeah. Well, and also Oregon in the quarterfinal round, if you were to lose, how does that impact Ryan Day's job security, right? Like if you were getting them in the semifinal round, you lost, maybe you could validate it or it'd be more accepting than if it's the quarterfinal round with the team that was supposed to have championship aspirations.
Spencer, you lose to him at all, I can tell you what it does for Ryan Day's job security.
Well,
the only thing you should secure is a flight.
Even if it was in the national championship game and it was like another 1-point game, you think you would get fired for that?
I'd find it. I think Ohio State fans would still want his head on the stick.
Well, that's Ohio State fans, but what would Ross Bjork and the powers that be decide? That's the big question. So I don't know. But again, I've said anything short of a national championship run, he has to go. I'm just throwing out scenarios because it seems like for whatever reason they have been hesitant to move on from Ryan Day to this point. So why would that change if they make a run to the title game, even if they were to lose? All right, guys. Let's take a pause real quick to get a quick word from our sponsors. We got 4 Down Territory coming up next with some wise words from James Franklin. Plus, we get in the weeds on the flag planting conversation, and we talk some more about the college football playoff. It's all coming your way next on Sons of the Shoe. Final segment, Sons of the Shoe here for you on our midweek episode. We actually won't have a post-game episode. Maybe though, like maybe there's room to do after the Big Ten championship game, like a mini-sode where we react to what happens and what it means for Ohio State. We'll see what we're thinking. But Jake Vulinec, Spencer German here with you. And we move to the final segment. We're not even doing the Michigan Panic Meter anymore. Our panic should all be in the Scarlet because Ryan Day is in the Scarlet with his panic meter on Michigan. So we might as well just join him in the deep end because it's ridiculous at this point. So we'll skip the Michigan Panic Meter. We know we're all mad and upset.
Can I get can my Michigan Panic Meter be the glazed over look he had after the game? Is that a panic meter?
Maybe we need to change it to Ryan Day's face in that moment versus Ryan Day's face after the Notre Dame game where he's yelling, I want to know where Lou Holtz is right now. We can have like that be the scale instead of like colors. It can be like, where's Lou Holtz on Michigan, or are you standing there with a malaise, not knowing what's going on with your team right now? I like that. Well, we'll have to, you know what? I might have to revamp the graphic. That might be another off-season thing that we have to do. Jake, we start, as always, on 4 Down Territory with going to you for our big voiceovers.
It's first down.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
If this doesn't work out for you on this podcast, you should be doing PA announcing for football games. So James Franklin, who normally is a bozo, and I don't always really like the things that he does and says, had a very profound, I thought, statement after beating Maryland this weekend, and the Maryland head coach, Mike Locksley, taking exception to them throwing for a touchdown late in the game. Here's what he had to say in response.
It didn't look like it was the smoothest post-game handshake. Is that the statistics and their ones still in there, or can you explain that last touchdown?
Yeah, I get it, right? At the end of the game, we throw a touchdown. I get it. But a couple things I will say. My job is to put the 3s and 4s in the game. But when the 3s and 4s get to go in the game, they get to play football. Those guys deserve to play football. Your 1s are in the game. You were trying to score. We're trying to score. On top of that, you're playing cover 0. If you don't want, play cover 2. So I'm good with it. And on top of that, there's also a change in college football. We are trying to play as long as we can, make the playoffs, and be seeded as high as possible. And scoring as many points and a point differential matters. All that matters. And if you don't get that, it's really not my problem. So, W, 1-0. I'm good with it. Anybody that's not, that's their problem.
I mean, James Franklin was spitting, my man. Like that was some impressive stuff. And I got it. Like the funniest part to me is when he's like, also, you're playing cover 0. I was like, he just called him out. He's like, you're playing cover 0. What the hell are you doing? Like, of course we're going to try to score on you. Like maybe just sit in cover 2 when you're down 30 points. I agree with everything that he said, by the way.
Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong word spoken in that. It's like, okay, like when your 3s and your 4s are in the game, I agree with like wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have your backups in, like why do those guys have to hand it off and run halfback dive the entire game, right? Like,
right.
Why do you have to just call 3 run plays and then punt it away? Like, no, let those guys go play, especially if the other team's playing their 1s or their 3s. In that matter of fact, like go give them a football game. And with the college football playoff committee, yeah, I'm going to run up the score as much as I can. Every single win that I get against a bad team needs to look dominant. Like Indiana did that too. The scores were high. Every team has done that. Ohio State did it against Indiana, went and scored in the last second. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think it is the coach's job to call off the dogs in a sense by putting his backups in. And then beyond that, like, yeah, let them play football. Like you want to get these guys tangible experience anyway, because that's like the next crop of guys coming through. Like, why do they not get a chance to just play actual football just because your team stinks and you're down 30? And if you don't like it, I'll say the same thing I say about guys bunting in baseball when they're up like 10 points or 10 runs. Stop it. Don't let them bunt. Bring somebody up from third base to field the bunt better. Like, what do you want? Like, it's up to you to shut that down. And you had your 1s and you still couldn't stop it. So that's on you. All right, that'll do it for first down. Jake?
Second down.
Along the lines of like disrespecting your opponents, we saw what happened at the end of the Ohio State-Michigan game. It wasn't the only setting, though, where flag planting at midfield was a problem. I know NC State, UNC had this. There was a couple other teams, too. I don't remember them all off the top of my head. And I did see in the nightcap game, Texas was like converging on Texas A&M's logo, and Steve Sarkisian sort of shut it down and shuffled them to the locker room to prevent any sort of skirmishes. A lot of people have had comments on this. I know Baker Mayfield chimed in on it. He obviously had the famous flag planting at Ohio Stadium back in the day. Others have as well. It's going to get banned. I think that's the kind of end result. My stance on this, Jake, I have a more like longer one, but I'm not going to steal the floor from you like always here. I'm just going to say in between the lines of a football game, like you have, you can do what you want. Or no, sorry. Like there's certain rules of like and things that you can't cross when you're disrespectful, right? Like you can't. It's part of the rules. But once the game ends, man, like all bets are off. And I'm not going to go as far as like comparing it to like whatever you said that one person said was like, oh, this is like somebody breaking into your house and like stealing your wife. Like, no, it's not that. It's just a logo. But I do know that is held in high esteem for football teams. Like they don't want you stepping on their logo. They don't want you doing all these things. So again, like they view that as disrespectful. Just because you win a game doesn't mean you get to decide what's disrespectful and what's not disrespectful. And so the argument of like, well, just win the game if you don't want it to happen. No, that doesn't apply. The second the game's over, if you go do something like that, the opposing team gets to decide if it's disrespectful or not. And if they, meet you at midfield with it, then guess what? Fuck around and find out. That's my stance on it. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I get why maybe it didn't look great that Ohio State lost the game and then they were like all up in Michigan's grill. But again, who am I to tell them how to feel about it? If they think it's disrespectful, and we clearly saw a lot of teams feel it's disrespectful, then you maybe just shouldn't do it in the first place.
I think it comes down to coaching. Like you said, Steve Sarkisian sort of put it away. I think if you don't want your team to plant the flag, your coach, one, shouldn't be letting that happen. Two, I am in the nature of thinking, win the game and you don't get the flag planted, right? I still think you can go in the middle of the field, fuck around and find out. I don't think it should be banned, by the way. That's just ridiculous. Like it's a post game. That's like banning court storming. What are you're going to find the university?
That's probably coming too, honestly.
Yeah, but what are you going to do? You're going to, I mean, it basically already is, right? Like you already get like fined for when your field gets rushed or your court gets rushed. There's already fines that come with that. So what are you going to do? You're going to fine the university? Big whoop. If I'm a player, I don't care if you fine the university. Take it out of my NIL money. What are they going to do? Give them $10,000 fine? I'll go plant the flag. It's way more important to me than the $10,000. Like, who cares? Especially when it's coming out of the university's pocketbook. I don't care. But like, it comes down to if you don't want, especially your rival, to go plant their flag, you have opportunity. You got 60 minutes to go beat them. Like, go figure it out.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I disagree. Like, I at that point, like that's something that clearly is universally deemed as disrespectful. So, and I do think it comes down to coaching though. Like, sure, and that's why in the Ohio State Michigan situation, it's on both Ryan Day and Sharon Moore. Ryan Day should have been in there stopping guys, and Sharon Moore shouldn't have let his guys do that. But rivals will be rivals. I guess that's going to do it for second down.
Third down.
We'll keep this somewhat brief, but biggest shakeups that can happen this weekend. We sort of alluded to this, but like obviously if Clemson beats SMU, that's a pretty big one. If Texas beats Georgia, I think they probably just end up like trading places.
Vice versa, yeah. Georgia beats Texas.
Wait, what'd you say?
Vice versa. You said Texas beat Georgia. Yeah, Georgia beats Texas.
But I think in the grand scheme of things, like we know Miami's out, we know Ole Miss is out. Like there's not a lot that's going to change in terms of like teams that weren't in this iteration getting a chance to get back in. I guess like there is one argument to be made of does Ohio State get bumped up if Oregon blows out Penn State? Would you put Ohio State ahead of Penn State as a 2-loss Penn State team? Like would they get punished for playing an extra game against Oregon? And maybe they fall in the rankings to a point where Ohio State then jumps ahead of them and then gets a better seed in the tournament.
I don't think so. I think both of them then would have a loss to Oregon. Obviously, Ohio State would have the head-to-head, but I think if you're putting them in the 5 right now and they go play against the best team in the country and lose, I don't think you can get punished for that, right?
Yeah, I agree.
It just seems stupid. Like, why? Then I wouldn't want to play for the Big Ten championship. I would make sure there's one team constantly ahead of me, and it lets me still rank nicely. Like, why do I want to go play the top team in the country then?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Obviously, Boise State losing to UNLV could be a big shakeup. Like, what happens with those two teams would both get in? But most of the big shakeups come with like some of the lower level conference. I shouldn't say lower level because Big 12 is, I guess, considered a Power 5 still, even though it's kind of fraudulent. But whatever happens in the ACC and the Big 12 and the Mountain West, I guess, are like the big sort of question marks going into the weekend in terms of like those could be the biggest shakeups. But I think what we saw this week is probably the basic iteration of what it's going to look like next Sunday when they unveil the official bracket. And that wraps us for third down. Last but not least, Jake.
It's fourth down.
In lieu of the bracket that we were just talking about, what is the first round matchup that you are most excited to see given how it's set up right now?
I could take the gimme and say Ohio State, Tennessee, but I'm going to go Notre Dame, Alabama.
Okay.
I think that game has a chance to. It's not the Alabama of old. Notre Dame, I mean, you threw Marcus Freeman out on the table. Well,
yeah.
He gets his chance to play in a big game here and take on one of the biggest like program names in all of college sports. So I think that one probably pans out pretty well. You get to see Riley Leonard. You get to see Jalen Milroe. Like, I don't know. Seems like some big names. Obviously, as an Ohio State podcast, I think we'd be biased to pick Ohio State, but I think that game's on the other side of the bracket and the complete other corner is kind of interesting.
Well, so the reason I like that answer is because in lieu of my argument about Marcus Freeman being the guy to replace Ryan Day, that's a game that Ohio State fans should watch because if he pulls it off, all of a sudden I bet you Ohio State fans that you know what that I hope that happens now. I hope that matchup stays the same, and I hope that Ohio State fans in like 3 weeks' time are coming on this podcast and they're like, Spencer was right. I like Marcus Freeman now because they're like, what has he proven? What has he proven? If he beats Bama in the playoff, that's proven something to me. So I'm guessing a lot of people will agree. It's all about the optics of it. And beating Bama has some big optics to it. I do think Tennessee Ohio State's probably the premier matchup of that setup. But I'll throw out there in given what we said about like conferences doing battle head to head, and that's the point of the playoff. Georgia, Indiana is intriguing because that is your classic case of like the Big Ten stinks. They're not as good as the SEC. The SEC is just better, and you're going to get a chance to let them prove it on the field. And so I kind of would be very excited about seeing that matchup because it's a chance for Indiana sort of to establish itself as not being a fluke and, show if the Big Ten really can hang with them. On the flip side of that, though, I'm going to hate the discourse after that game if Georgia wins in like a blowout because it's just going to be a bunch of people being like, see, this is why we didn't need a 12-team playoff. Indiana didn't deserve to be in. And it's going to be like, again, we let them decide it on the field. That's the point here. I can't stand that argument, but we'll get into that another time. That is all the time that we have for today. Appreciate you guys jumping on in with us on Sons of the Shoe. I implore you to like, follow, subscribe, review the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Check out our post-game Michigan reaction show. Help us get our views up even more. It's going off the charts right now, and we appreciate you guys supporting us there. But yeah, Apple, Spotify, Odyssey app, and of course the 92 Through the Fan YouTube channel. Jake, for Jake Vulinec, I'm Spencer German. We'll see about doing maybe a post-game mini-sode after the Big Ten championship game and just talking about what it might mean for Ohio State. But until then, thank you guys for watching. As always, enjoy a football weekend. And as always, go Bucks.
Go Bucks.